it's going to be a great convenience to be an autonomous car, but there are many people whose jobs it is to drive. So in fact, I think it might be the single largest employer of people is driving in various forms. And so then we need to figure out new roles for what do those people do. But it will be very disruptive and very quick. Now, I should characterize what I mean by quick, because quick means different things to different people. There are over 2 billion vehicles in the world, approaching 2.5 billion cars and trucks in the world. The total new vehicle production capacity is about 100 million. Which makes sense because the life of a car or truck before it's finally scrapped is about 25 years. So the point at which we see full autonomy appear will not be the point at which there is massive societal upheaval, because it will take a long time to make enough autonomous vehicles to disrupt employment. So that disruption I'm talking about will take place over about 20 years. But still, 20 years is a short period of time to have, I think, something like 12 to 15% of the workforce be unemployed.
Yeah, thank you. This is the largest global government summit. We have over 139 government here. If you want to advise government officials to be ready for the future, what is 3 things or 3 advice you'll give them?
Well, I think the first bit of advice would be to really pay close attention to the development of artificial intelligence. I think we need to just be very careful in how we adopt artificial intelligence, and to make sure that researchers don't get carried away. Because sometimes what happens is a scientist can get so engrossed in their work, they don't necessarily realize the ramifications of what they're doing. So I think it's important for public safety that governments keep a close eye on artificial intelligence and make sure that it does not represent a danger to the public. Let's see. Secondly, I would say we do need to think about transport in general, and there's the movement towards electric vehicles, sustainable transport. I think that's going to be good for many reasons, but again, not something that happens immediately. That'll happen slower than the self-driving vehicles. So that's probably something that happens over 30 or 40 years, the transition to electric vehicles. So thinking about that in context, the demand for electricity will increase dramatically. So currently, in terms of total energy usage in the world, it's about 1/3 electricity, about 1/3 transport, about 1/3 heating. So over time, that will transition to almost all, not all, but predominantly electricity, which means that the demand for electricity will probably triple. So it's going to be very important to think about how do you make so much more electricity.
Seem they have an easy job. That's it. There is no more challenges for them.
No, well, then I think maybe these things do play into each other a little bit. But what to do about mass unemployment? This is going to be a massive social challenge. And I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income. I don't think we're going to have a choice.
Universal basic income.
Universal basic income. I think it's going to be necessary.
So it means that unemployed people will be paid across the globe.
Yeah.
Because there is no job. machine robot is taking over?
There will be fewer and fewer jobs that a robot cannot do better.
Okay.
That's simply and I want to be clear that these are not things that I think that I wish would happen. These are simply things that I think probably will happen. And if my assessment is correct and they probably will happen, then we need to say, what are we going to do about it? And I think some kind of a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Now, the output of goods and services will be extremely high. So with automation, there will come abundance. There will be almost everything will get very cheap. I think I think we'll just end up doing a universal basic income. It's going to be necessary. The harder challenge, much harder challenge, is how do people then have meaning? Like a lot of people, they derive their meaning from their employment. So if you don't have, if you're not needed, if there's not a need for your labor, how do you, what's the meaning? Do you have meaning? Do you feel useless? That's a much harder problem to deal with. And then how do we ensure that the future is going to be the future that we want, that we still like? No, I mean, I do think that there's a potential path here which is, and we're really getting into science fiction or sort of advanced science stuff, but having some sort of merger with biological intelligence and machine intelligence. To some degree, we are already a cyborg. You think of like the digital tools that you have, your phone, your computer, the applications that you have, like the fact that, as I was mentioning earlier, you can ask a question and instantly get an answer from Google or from other things. And so you already have a digital tertiary layer. I say tertiary because you can think of the limbic system, kind of the animal brain or the primal brain, and then the cortex, kind of the thinking, planning part of the brain, and then your digital self as a third layer. So you already have that, and it's like if somebody dies, their digital ghost is still around. All of their emails and the pictures that they posted and the social media, that still lives, even if they died. So over time, I think we'll probably see a closer merger of biological intelligence and digital intelligence. And it's mostly about the bandwidth, the speed of the connection between your brain and the digital extension of yourself. Particularly output. And output, if anything, is getting worse. We used to have like keyboards that we'd use a lot. Now we do most of our input through our thumbs on a phone. And that's just very slow. A computer can communicate at 1 trillion bits per second, but your thumb can maybe do, 10 bits per second or 100 if you're being generous. So some high bandwidth interface to the brain, I think, will be something that helps achieve a symbiosis between human and machine intelligence, and maybe solves the control problem and the usefulness problem. Getting pretty esoteric here. I don't know if this is...
It's close.
Okay.
We got it. Always you think out of the box. Your idea is so huge. You want to go to space. You decided to go to space. You did it. You decided that you want to land your rocket back. You failed 7 times, 8 times?
Yeah, something like that.
Then it landed
more times than I care to count.
Yeah. How do you come with this idea, actually? Sometimes they're pushing the human limit. You are always pushing the human limit. Why?
Well, I think about what technology solution is necessary in order to achieve the particular goal, and then try to make as much progress in that direction as possible. So in the case of spaceflight, the critical breakthrough that's necessary in spaceflight is rapid and complete reusability of rockets, just as we have for aircraft. You could imagine that if an aircraft was single use, almost no one would fly. Because you can buy, like, say, a 747 might be $250 million, $300 million, or something like that. You'd need two of them for a round trip. But nobody's going to pay millions of dollars per ticket to fly, to do air travel. But because you can reuse the aircraft tens of thousands of times, the air travel becomes much more affordable. And the same is true of rockets. So our rocket costs $60 million, roughly. So the capital cost, if it can be used once, is $60 million. But the capital cost, if it can be used 1,000 times, is $60,000. So then if you can carry a lot of people per flight, then you can get the cost of space flight to be something not far from the cost of air flight. So it's extremely fundamental. Because Earth's gravity well is quite deep, Earth has a relatively, fairly high gravity, the difficulty of making a rocket reusable is much greater than the difficulty of making an aircraft reusable. And that's why a fully reusable rocket has never been developed thus far. But if you use the most advanced materials, most advanced design techniques, and you get everything just right, then I'm confident that you can do a fully reusable rocket. Fortunately, if Earth's gravity was even 10% stronger, I would say it would be impossible.
You need a team around you to deliver a lot of ideas. How do you choose your team? Based on what?
Well, I suppose honestly that it tends to be gut feel more than anything else. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same. It's
what do you ask?
I said, tell me the story of your life, and the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And then, and also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question, I think, is very important, because the people that really solved the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. And the people that pretended to solve the problem, they can maybe go one level and then they get stuck.
So, what was your biggest challenge in life?
Biggest challenge in life?
No challenge.
Well, no, there's a lot of them. I'm trying to decide which is which is the worst. I think just thinking about how to spend time. One of the biggest challenges, I think, is making sure you have a corrective feedback loop, and then maintaining that corrective feedback loop over time, even when people want to tell you exactly what you want to hear.
Okay.
That's very difficult.
Yes. Time is over. I'll ask you just one last question,
Sure.
if you allow me. In the World Government Summit, we have so many people so many young people actually, from across the globe. If you have an advice to them, young people globally who want to be like Elon Musk, what's your advice to them?
I think that probably they shouldn't want to be.
You?
I think it sounds better than it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as much fun being me as you'd think. I don't know.
You don't think so?
No. There's definitely, it could be worse for sure, but it's, I'm not sure I'm not sure I want to be me.
Okay.
But if, I think advice, I mean, if you want to make progress in things, I think that the best analytical framework for understanding the future is physics. I'd recommend studying the thinking process around physics, like not the equations. I mean, the equations certainly they're helpful, but the way of thinking in physics is it's the best framework for understanding things that are counterintuitive, and always taking the position that you are to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong over time. I think one of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. Like you want something to be true, even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong, and your goal is to be less wrong, and solicit critical feedback, particularly from friends. Like friends, particularly friends, if somebody loves you, they want the best for you. They don't want to tell you the bad things. So you have to ask them, and say, really, I really do want to know. and then they'll tell you.
Thank you very much. It's been it is great for the World Government Summit to have a legend who's creating the future for humanity to share his thought, his idea, his vision, his challenges, and his hope for life. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.